Welcome to the first neutral zone of the women's ice hockey season. I'm Christina Tsimenis, joined alongside Anthony Rossi. We're going to jump straight in with the preseason USCHO polls. Starting off at number 1 is Wisconsin with all 20 first place votes. Next at number 2 is Ohio State, number 3 is Minnesota, and number 4 is Cornell, which is our first ECAC team on the polls. Next is Colgate, followed by Minnesota Duluth, Clarkson in 7th, and Penn State in 10th.
Yeah, a lot of ECAC representation in the top 8. Cornell, Colgate, Clarkson. The 3 that represent the ECAC, obviously Wisconsin, Ohio State, Minnesota Duluth, all in the same conference. They're going to be vying for spots all year long. Probably expect Minnesota Duluth to end up down here at some point during the year. I don't expect them to finish out there. I probably expect them to finish in this top 8, right where they are, maybe at number 6, number 7, around there. But now we look at 9 to 15, starting with St. Lawrence and Quinnipiac, 2 ECAC teams that have been vying for spots in this top 15 for a couple of years now. St. Lawrence, obviously my freshman year back in 2022, they were barely getting into the ECAC playoffs. They had a tough time kind of playing against Quinnipiac. That was a really good series between the 3 and 6 seed. Now Quinnipiac's below St. Lawrence. Obviously St. Lawrence with Emma Sophie Nordstrom, who we'll eventually talk about later on in the season. But I want to get through this the bottom 6 teams down here with Boston University, UConn, and Northeastern all being in the Hockey East. Boston University and UConn and Northeastern, all 3 of these Hockey East teams are teams the Bobcats are going to be playing later on this year, who Freddie and Spencer will be talking about later. And then the last 2 teams we need to mention are St. Cloud State and Princeton. Princeton being the 6th ECAC team in the top 15. A lot of representation from the ECAC. But now we're going to look at the Bobcats specifically. Let's check out these new additions. Obviously, to the 2 transfers that the Bobcats got in the transfer portal, Alex Law and Kelly Hogarth. Law being a forward from Boston University and Hogarth being the lone goalie transfer into Quinnipiac. And down here we have Casey Clausen. Obviously, you'll talk about all the first years, but Clausen is redshirting this year. Expect her to learn a lot behind Felicia Frank and Kelly Hogarth, who are probably going to be the 1-2 punch for the Bobcats. Tatum Black will definitely be teaching her as well, as she was named an assistant captain for this team. But if you want to run through the rest of the first year additions for the Bobcats for us.
So starting off with the first years, we have Ella Johnson, Jade Barbarotti, Sophie Rousseau, Ruby Roque, Regan Berglund, Ella Pasqua, Lincoln Brown, Peyton Cormier, and Casey Clausen.
So for this big list that we have, there are 11 players, 2 transfers, 9 first years. It's the biggest first year class that this Bobcats team has had since the 2010-11 season. That was actually Kelly Babstock's freshman year for all the PWHL fans out there. But I'm interested to see, in this list of 11, who do you think is going to be the most impactful person that comes in this year?
Now, I think I have a bit of a controversial take on this, but I'm going to go with Alex Law, personally. She's obviously a transfer from Boston University, a junior, so I think she's going to bring more of a veteran presence to this really young team. She did have 9 points last season with BU, 3 goals, 6 assists, but those 3 goals were really impactful ones. One was shorthanded, one was an overtime game winner, and the other was a game winner. And she was also on the lacrosse team her first year at BU. And she's also on the roster for the lacrosse team here at Quinnipiac this year. So I think she's going to bring that veteran presence to this team. And she looked really good in the exhibition game against UConn.
I like that pick, Christine. I know it's a little bit controversial, but I do like that. I think that she'll bring a lot of veteran leadership, like you said. Same with Kelly Hogarth, but I'm not going to pick Kelly Hogarth because we expect her to do well. She's probably going to be that backup goalie behind Felicia Frank, maybe get some starting minutes as well. But I want to talk about 3 players in particular: Ella Johnson, Jade Barbarotti, and Peyton Cormier. And then Ruby Roque is also a very good player from Minnetonka. But I think that these 3 players are going to make the biggest impact and the biggest splash that Cass Turner has had in a long time since Caitlin LaMarche got recruited here. Barbarotti is coming in as a 21-year-old first year. She played overseas with France. She played on that national stage too, actually playing in the Women's World Championships, not the World Juniors, but the World Championships, which is crazy. And she wasn't 21. She was probably like, I want to say 18, 17 years old. So she did that at a young age. Also, Ella Johnson, we expect her to do well. She's also got national playing experience. So does Cormier, both playing for Team USA with Johnson and Team Canada, Cormier respectively. But that's really all the time we have to talk about the new additions and the USCHO poll. We want to toss it to Freddie Martin and Spencer Decker, who will talk about Quinnipiac's non-conference schedule.
Thanks, guys. Freddie, why don't you roll us through the Bobcats' non-conference schedule?
Absolutely. The Bobcats start off their non-conference schedule against Maine this weekend. Then they move to Providence to play an away game and then a home game in the same weekend. They then move on to at Syracuse and then home against Northeastern. That moves them into the Nutmeg Classic in Storrs, Connecticut at UConn, where they are going to play UConn, and then depending on the result of that game, are going to play either Sacred Heart or Yale. And then in January, for the first time in NCAA women's ice hockey history, the first ever Friendship Four will be held in Northern Ireland, which the Bobcats will be participating in. They will be playing against Boston University in their first matchup, and depending on the result of that game, they will either be playing Minnesota Duluth or Hartford.
Yeah, and Freddie, that first Maine series too, the Bobcats in their last 10 games, 9-0-1, and at home especially, the Bobcats have been good. It's a nice little tune-up game for this Bobcat squad. They get a doubleheader at home. They don't have to travel on the road till they play Providence. And last year when the Bobcats were looking good, when they took down teams like Clarkson and St. Lawrence, they then went on the road and lost to Providence, which at the time was not that good of a team. So I like that they go to Maine, get their team ready in sorts, and then go to Providence. Get up to go to Syracuse. Last year, the Bobcats at home really destroyed the Syracuse Orange. So I think that after the Providence series, it might be a little tough. They get the home as well, which is nice. Then they go play Northeastern, pretty good school. Northeastern Huskies are always very good. And this, you can't forget the Nutmeg Classic. I mean, that's a very important. The Battle of Connecticut on the line. Similar to CTI side, you have on the men's side. So they go to UConn. I mean, two pretty good teams between UConn and Yale. The Bobcats, ECAC and that Hockey East range as well. And then the Friendship Four is going to be historic. The Bobcats, obviously, once you get through that Nutmeg Classic, you have that break. There's not much hockey going on. And they don't play any games from the 29th of November all the way into the early January because they get that time off for that winter break. But still, really important. I think that Friendship Four is going to be awesome for the Bobcats to go and really just experience that as a team. But also playing against great teams like Boston U and Minnesota Duluth as well. So it's going to be a tough test for this Bobcats team, but right before they really move into ECAC play, they finish that non-conference schedule off with two very tough opponents, and I think it's really just awesome as well that they get to travel to Northern Ireland and be the first ever team to participate in that Friendship Four. That is all the time we have for our preseason Neutral Zone. Make sure to follow us on X and Instagram at Q30 Sports, and also subscribe on YouTube at Q30 Television to continue to watch our Neutral Zones throughout the season. And also stay tuned for our content this weekend as the Bobcats face off against the Maine Black Bears. I'm Spencer Decker. That was Freddie Martin. We'll see you next time on the Neutral Zone.